This episode of Running for the Bus is sponsored by Veloforte. Veloforte offer delicious, nutritious products that help you to reach your goals by feeling your best using all natural ingredients. Their hand-baked energy bars are so tasty. I genuinely love them. And if you'd like to try out any of their other brilliant products, you can do so using the code RFTB30 and that'll get you 30% off. And you can use that unlimited times. Hello and welcome to Running for the Bus, presented by BKDMC and hosted by me, Ben Kelleher. On this episode, I'm joined by the remarkable Sally Orange MBE. Sally is an endurance runner, adventure athlete and mental health campaigner. She served 22 years of exemplary service with the Royal Army Medical Corps, has run over 80 marathons, completed 8 full Ironman triathlons, and was awarded the Veteran of the Year in 2023. And this is really just scratching the surface, and I'm sure by the time I've recorded this, there'll be even more things that she'll have done. So let's get into it and waste no time. Sally, it's my total pleasure to be welcoming you to Running for the Bus today. How are you?
Hi Ben, yeah, I'm great, thank you. So lovely to actually finally get a chance to chat to you because it's been a while. We've both had busy, hectic schedules, so yeah, lovely to chat
Absolutely. I've been
today.
so looking forward to this one. I've been telling everyone about it since we met back in April at the London Marathon. I've been seeing your journey, so it really is an absolute pleasure. And I really just wanted to get into it and discuss, first of all, how it started for you in terms of what life looked like growing up. And was there sort of any setbacks that you found along the way?
Yeah, so I had a fairly normal upbringing, grew up in Stafford, a brother and two sisters, and at school I was never sort of the best, but I wasn't the worst either. I did my GCSEs, did okay in that, and then thought I'll go on and do my A levels. It was then really when my journey started when I was 16, and I unfortunately went ice skating for the day and broke my
Oh,
leg when I was ice skating. And I'd gone with my boyfriend at the time, and I had to spend a month in hospital, but I had to have surgery, metalwork in it.
wow.
Unfortunately, my boyfriend went off with my best friend while I was in hospital.
Oh my
And that was probably
goodness.
the start of my sort of adversity in some ways. But there's a silver lining in that it also taught me that I wanted to become a physiotherapist. I'd learned what they did for a job and thought that was cool because you're helping people when they're in a pretty low time of their life. But unfortunately, because I'd missed so much school with the surgery, when I did my A levels, when I got my results, they weren't quite what I'd hoped for. And even though I'd applied and got a place to study physiotherapy, I was rejected because I hadn't got the grades. But I was determined. So I resat my A levels thinking that is definitely what I want to do. I did my exams again, and unfortunately, when I got the results the second time, I'd done even worse than the first
Wow.
time. I
Setback.
was devastated. Yeah, another setback. And I think it's because I put so much pressure on myself that I had to get these certain grades. And if I didn't get them, then I wouldn't be able to become a physio. And, it looked as though that dream was
Mm.
over. But I went off to do a radiography degree thinking, well, it's similar to physio. Turns out it's nothing similar at all. And when I was there doing barium enemas and sort of sticking tubes up people's bottoms, thinking this isn't really what I want to do for a career, so I dropped out of that university course and went to do another one. And it was at a university where they also did physiotherapy. So I thought maybe if I get into that course or got onto that course, I could potentially transfer. So I kept applying and applying and applying. And I applied not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 years in a row to be a physiotherapist.
Some
So I first
determination.
applied in 1991 and then finally got a place in 97 and then finally graduated in 2000 and yeah, got to that dream of becoming a physio. Just took a long way to get there. But it taught me that physical health, when you've been through something, you can help other people and you can understand exactly what it's like and get the best out of them when they're not physically feeling at their
Yeah,
best.
yeah, that's amazing. That journey that you went on. I mean, talk about building resilience at a young age. Like I mean, every 16-year-old's worst nightmare is to break your leg and have something like that happen. And then I guess the worst nightmare would be to then have your boyfriend run off with your best friend, and then all of those things along the way, and talking about just going through that 6 years in a row, and then finally cracking through. Like, how did it feel when you finally got through and you were able to do that? Like, what was that feeling like?
Do you know, it was funny. At my graduation, my mum, because obviously they'd been on a journey with me, and she said, if you, all those years, she said, if you ever graduate as a physio, I'm going to have fireworks at your graduation.
Yeah,
All, but then when we went out for a meal later, she'd bought some like little
that's
sparklers and stuff.
excellent.
But there's an actually really quite interesting twist. So I did my career as a physiotherapist, and I joined the army, got to do some incredible things. I volunteered at the Commonwealth Games. I was at the Paralympics in London volunteering. I cycled, I was physio for Freddie Flintoff and Lawrence Dallaglio when they were cycling from Rome to
Oh,
Edinburgh. And, some just really, really incredible
yeah,
things. And a couple of years ago, which was 30 years after I'd first applied to that university that turned me down, I did end up studying at that same
yeah.
university. I got an email from them, and it was in my junk mail, and I remember exactly where I was. And I read this email, and it said, "We would like to offer you an honorary doctorate." So forget Dr. Pepper, this is Dr. Orange, and for my services to physiotherapy and mental health. Hopefully, show people what you can go on to achieve if you really, really want to do something despite the knockbacks and the setbacks. And it was a lot of
Mm,
heartache, a lot of
mm.
tears. But yeah, to suddenly stand on that stage and receive the honorary doctorate was one of the proudest moments of my life. Who'd have thought?
Well, I think you'd have thought by the sound of it. It sounds like you were determined the whole way. That mental determination seems like there was just no stopping you. And I'm sure your family as well, when they finally saw you get there, were just super proud. Like you've absolutely worked your way up until that point. So it's just amazing, that journey. And like you say, to go from being rejected so many times and then receiving that honorary doctorate and all along the way, it's just an amazing story. So can you just sort of go back a little bit to when you joined the Royal Army Medical Corps, and sort of how did you end up going down that route?
Yeah. So at the first degree that I did, the health studies one in Leeds, didn't know anything about the army at all. And then when I went to Nottingham to study physiotherapy, I'd heard about this thing called the University Officer Training Corps. I didn't know anything about. I'd never been in cadets. I hadn't got any of my family members or anything part of the military, but I'd heard about it and thought, oh, you can get to go skiing and you can get to go on adventure training and do all these
Yeah.
different things. So I was actually on the reserve list to even get into the selection, but somebody dropped out, and so it meant that I could go on the selection weekend. And remarkably, I was actually selected. And then had a journey with the Officers Training Corps for a couple of years. But I constantly told myself I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't good enough to be able to do the things. I wasn't good enough to join the regular army. So I joined the reserve
Mm.
army, and the territorial army, as it was called then, the army reserves now. And yeah, kind of worked my way up through that. So I actually started as a private soldier. Once I graduated, I got my commission and I became a lieutenant, then promoted to captain, and to finally to a major, where I did actually go to Afghanistan as a major and was the officer in command of the Defence Medical Rehabilitation Team. So it was the deployed medical rehabilitation team out in Afghanistan. So yeah, a real sort of journey of not knowing anything at all to suddenly then heading up a department. Quite some years later, it was almost, I don't know, 15, 17 years later that I actually went out to
Mm.
Afghanistan. And yeah, again, just had some incredible experiences. The patients that I met, the people that I treated, and then getting to treat some very, very severely injured people in Afghanistan. But the beauty being that I could then go back to the UK and see how well some of those patients have done, double, triple
Yeah.
amputees who have gone on and just done some remarkable feats. Those kind of things that inspire me to go, well, do you know what? If somebody with no legs can do that, then I've got legs. I've got the privilege of, something that we take so much for granted until you don't have it.
Mm.
And yeah, I use them sometimes as my inspiration for being able to do some of the things that I do.
Yeah. You've touched on some of the things that you took away from that time that you obviously spent in Afghanistan. What other things did you take away from that 22 years of service that you had?
Yeah, I can look at rose tinted glasses and I can think of the mountains that I climbed and the oceans that I swam and, the regimental dinners where you're wearing all your nice uniform. And, I was on the USS Medway in San Diego and all of those things. And they're what I tend to look back on. But I can also remember times, some two specific times. I remember telling my commanding officer that I was going to take on the Marathon des Sables. I'm sure you've probably heard of the Marathon des Sables, but for anyone who hasn't, it's kind of 6 marathons, 7 days across the Sahara Desert, carrying all your own kit, and is known as the toughest foot race on earth. It's pretty up
Yeah.
there. I'd signed up for it and remember, first of all, my parents saying, we don't think you should do it. We don't think you'll be able to do it. We don't want you to have to go through failure again. And I actually ended up taking myself off. I didn't do it. And then a couple of years later, I thought, no, I definitely want to do it. It's what I want
Yeah.
to do. So I signed up again. I told my commanding officer, and he just said, well, I know Marines who haven't been able to achieve that. I was sort of like,
Mm.
thanks. Anyway, I went out, and there's quite a funny story to it, which if we get a chance, I'll come back to, but it is quite a good story that I use for young people to basically show how your actions, you never know what the impact of your actions are on other
Yeah.
people. But essentially, I finished it and I came home and I didn't even get a congratulations from my commanding officer. Absolutely nothing. So something that, he didn't think that I would be able to achieve. And then I did achieve
Yeah.
it. And I do wonder whether or not he would have said that to a male officer if they were about to take on that
Yeah.
challenge, whether or not they would have put that doubt in your
Yeah.
mind. And another time was I got selected to compete in the Invictus
Yeah.
Games. The Invictus Games is for soldiers, officers, people in the military who have been either physically or psychologically injured or have an illness. So it could be cancer, it could be leukemia, anything really. And I've been selected to represent the UK. And I managed to get a medal in the cycling. And again, I came home and my training major said to me, so you've competed in the games for disabled people? And I said, no, not, I
Yeah.
haven't. My category was an open category. I wasn't competing against people with injured limbs. They all had similar problems to
Yeah.
myself. And he said, you've basically cheated. And I have never to this day shown anyone that medal. And so, whilst I can look at the military as rose tinted glasses, there were also the more difficult times. And I think it was those types of difficult times combined with the fact that I had this constant narrative that told myself that I wasn't good enough, that basically had an impact on my mental health. As I said, I was very good. I wasn't very good at anything, I told
Mm.
myself. But the one thing I was good at was telling myself I'm not very good. And I was pretty good at crying as well. And it did, had an effect on my mental health. And because I felt so guilty and so shameful about struggling with severe depression and anxiety, I didn't really tell anyone. I didn't get the help that I could have I could have done
Sure.
with, until it got to a point where it was critical. I very nearly took my
Mm.
life. I couldn't see a place on this earth for me. I felt an oxygen thief. I felt a burden to absolutely anybody and everybody. And I just thought the world would be better off without me. I got to a point where I didn't leave the house for 2 months. I didn't speak on the phone for 2 years. And basically, 20 hours of every day, I just wanted to be dead. The other 4 hours, I took sleeping tablets. And it shouldn't have ever got to that critical
Mm.
point of me wanting to, if I'd have got that help sooner. And that's why I'm so desperate to talk about it now and be open. I still struggle, I still take medication, and I still see a
Mm.
therapist. But I have no problem in saying that now, because I always say to people that you wouldn't learn to swim in a storm. So why do we leave it until we're at that crisis point with our mental health before we get any help? Because then it's really difficult when your head's already completely mush and it's been, had this constant narrative for so long. It's really difficult to learn the techniques that can help you. Whereas think about learning to swim. We do that in a safe environment where we're supported,
Yeah.
and so that we can use those tools if we were to find ourselves in a difficult situation. And that's why I try and promote now that people learn it when they are well, so that if they start on that slippery slope, they just know how to pull themselves back up
Yeah.
again.
Wow. That's so inspiring, Sally. That really is. That whole journey that you've just talked about there has touched me quite a lot, actually. Listening to that story and just hearing about the experiences you've gone through. I think the way that you're channeling that now and putting that into so much good work is just incredibly inspiring. And so I think you're one of the most inspiring people I know. So I think, you've absolutely put that
Oh, that's
into
very kind. Unfortunately, it did lead to my medical discharge. It got to a point where the army said, "This isn't an environment for you. You're not resilient enough. You're not tough. You're not tough enough." Which, looking back, I think I'd just taken on. I'd shown true
Yeah,
resilience by completing the Marathon des Sables, and had I been supported in the right way, I felt that I could actually help other people that were still in the military and allow them to know that it's not shameful. It's not, you shouldn't feel guilty. It's an illness. It wasn't something I wanted. I desperately, have
it's
tried.
also not really
And,
like who you
now
are.
I've got the management tools,
Yeah,
yeah, to sort of help with that. So and it did, it meant that I lost my profession, my career, because my self-confidence was just so
yeah,
crushed. And if I can prevent anyone else having to go through what I got through, and ironically now I've set up a career as a speaker so that I can go and talk to organizations, young people, and yeah, I can use my story to help them having to go down that same
yeah.
route, which yeah is turning things around. When life gives you lemons, make
You
lemonade.
certainly do. I think just going back to some of those points of that story as well, I think in terms of where you've come from and where you are now, I think when before I sort of touched on the fact that you believed in yourself, you had it there. And I think that's true. I think at the end of the day, like your mental resilience is within you. But it sounds like over your journey you've had people pushing you down and telling you you can't do this and knocking you down. And often that's come from perhaps an uneducated view, perhaps when we look back at the Invictus Games and what that, I think, was it your sergeant said to you? To just remember who it was.
Yeah, the trainer
Yeah,
major, yeah.
that's just an uneducated view on it. He doesn't understand the process. And there's that thing that he said has had such an impact on you. And to not be able to show that medal, I think you should be able to show it with pride and all the other things that you do.
And I think that's potentially a good time for me to have a fun story of the Marathon des
Yeah, please do.
Sables,
Yeah,
because it's, to me, it really shows how your actions, you don't realize the impact that your actions have on other people. And so just to lighten the mood, I was doing the MDS, and on the first day I was really unwell. I vomited. I got to one of the checkpoints and they were there ready with a
my
drip.
goodness.
And I managed to sit there, get some food down me, get some water, and feel actually I can carry on. I was pretty much last on that day, but it didn't matter. I finished it. So I was on to the second day. It was the other end that I had problems with, so diarrhea and some mishaps along that
Yeah.
way. And then the third day, I knew that I needed to drink because of the dehydration and the heat illness that I'd had. So in the middle of the night, I was like, I need to just keep drinking. Whenever I wake up, I need to drink. So we were in the bivouac. So you sleep in, 8 people, didn't particularly know them beforehand, but you're sat, sleeping in a tent. And I grabbed what I thought was my water bottle and drank it and thought, this doesn't taste very nice. This is really not, I think I spat it
Hmm.
out. In the morning, I said to my tent mate, I saw this bright orange bottle on his, and I said, what electrolyte drink are you using? And he said, no, 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 you don't want to drink that. I said, no, I already have. And the whole tent erupted in laughter, and the next tent and the next tent, because what I realised that he couldn't take the 20 steps out of the tent because his feet were so blistered to go to the loo. So he'd done it in the water bottle, which I had then inadvertently
Oh my
drank.
goodness.
Now, the next day was a double day, so carried on with that, and then the final day. But it was at the airport when someone I didn't know, and they just said to me, "How did you find it?" And I said, "Well, on the first day I vomited, second day I had diarrhea, third day I drank my tent mate's pee." And he said, "Oh my goodness," he said, "that's you." He said, "You got me through the MDS." I said, "Sorry," and he said, Well, anytime I was thinking, I can't do this, I just thought, at least I'm not that girl who's drank her tent mate's pee. So that's what I mean about you never know how your actions are inspiring other
Yeah,
people.
of
So,
course.
yeah,
That's
so
hilarious.
quite a story.
Wow, just when you think it can't get any harder,
I
it does.
know.
Oh my goodness, well done to you, because that would that would have broken me in so many ways. Wow, incredible.
Yeah, gives another story. My life's full of story. And growing up, when I was having all of these challenges, my mum just used to say, it's character building. And I'd be like, I do not want
Yeah.
a character. I just want something to go right in my life.
Well, lots has gone well in your life since then, and obviously you sort of touched a lot on that point before about the journey you went through and being in that place. So then, coming out of that, what would be your advice to somebody perhaps who's been in that place, in that position, and now is perhaps in a place where they're feeling particularly bad about whatever it might be? What would be the advice for them?
So it was the need to seek
Yeah,
help, and that needed to be professional help. And I had battled and battled and battled for years about not wanting medication, and I'd been on and off medication. I was always trying to come off the medication, but actually, what was keeping me well was the medication alongside the talking therapies. That it's not just a case of numbing the brain, it's about learning those techniques that now can help me manage them. So, as I mentioned before, I still have the struggles, but I have a list on my phone of the people that I can call, because my mind is very clever and very, very
mm,
unpleasant, in that when I'm not doing well, it can tell me you have no friends. So I have to have an actual reminder on my phone of who those
yeah,
friends are. I have to have pictures of the loved ones that would potentially miss me if I wasn't
mm,
here. Because when you're there thinking, I've got no one, I'm a burden to everybody, it's, having those things and the people, and also even a list of the things that I enjoy. Because when I'm well, I do enjoy things. But when I'm not well, I kind of can't even remember what things I even like or what make me feel good. So over time, I've made sure that I make that list so that when I start slipping, I can go, well, maybe you just need to go for a facial, or you maybe need, a massage, or go for a walk with the people that make you feel
yeah,
better. And or sometimes just do a jigsaw, because for me, when I was really unwell, I didn't want to be on my own, but I also didn't want to be with people
yeah,
either. And I found that jigsaws were a great way of sort of being with someone but not having to talk. If you go for a coffee with someone, you feel the pressure to have to
yeah,
talk. But also going for a walk was another way that you could let your mind sort of, if you're with someone, you don't have to look into their eyes. You're not having to be so personal that, because I spent a lot of time crying, and I didn't want that. I felt so ashamed that I couldn't go out without crying. So they would be just a couple of my tips, is to seek the help. When I broke my leg, I was given crutches and I was given
yeah,
physiotherapy. So some of it was to help me and some of it was to help
yeah,
myself. And I think that's the same with medication and talking therapies. It's learning how you can deal with things when you haven't got maybe the one of them. So yeah, they're some of the things. And just getting outside and
yeah,
moving. The power of moving is really quite
yeah,
incredible. And either doing that alone, or some people prefer to. We're all different, and what I say might not be right for somebody else. And it doesn't have to be climbing a mountain or running a marathon. It can be just going outside and playing with the kids, if you've not done
yeah.
that for some
Going for a
time. So
walk in the
yeah, lots
forest,
and lots of different
or
ways.
doing a 5K on a Sunday, like or a Saturday at park run, or as you say, it's sort of, if you prefer swimming or whatever you do, that's, as you said, it's finding those outlets and speaking to those people and not feeling ashamed about that, because I think that's often the biggest thing. People feel embarrassed or they feel ashamed as if they're not just getting it right. And as you said before, we wouldn't learn to swim in in the middle of an ocean sort of thing. We'd start in a pool and we'd have armbands. So it's okay that you're in a situation that you've not been in before to ask for help, and people want to support you.
And
There for
that's exactly what I say to people now, is first, or a couple of things, that people aren't mind readers, so they don't know what exactly it is that you need. I know that sometimes you don't know what you need, and so it might be trial and error. But if you turn it round and see that you're helping somebody out, you're giving somebody else the opportunity to help you. And we know that by helping other people, it makes you feel good. So if you turn it around that you're giving somebody else an opportunity to feel good, that can take the pressure off you feeling a burden. Just, a slight way that in my mind I've tried to sort of be
Absolutely
okay
true,
with it.
as well. You want to
Yeah.
help closing those doors and saying, no, it's fine, or I'm okay. You're not helping yourself. And also, like you say, they're thinking, why can't they share that? So but also in the same ways, like you say as well, it might be that you seek outside help and professional help if you perhaps feel that that's where you'd like to start from. And either of those sources is absolutely fine, whatever that might be.
Yeah, as a physiotherapist, no one will bat an eyelid if somebody booked in to see a physio. And I think it was out of coming from the physical health struggle I had with my leg and then wanting to help people physically is why my career started as a physiotherapist. And now having been through the difficult times and having really been there, I'm not afraid if someone says to me, I don't want to live. And the fact that it doesn't scare me means that I'll talk about it and that can normalize it and let other people know that it's okay to have those thoughts. It's what we do with those thoughts to overcome them so that we don't act on the thoughts that's important. Because, so many people struggle. And I know that I have the constant narrative that you're not good enough, you're not good enough. But I don't think I know I'm not the only person in the world that thinks that, because unfortunately we compare ourselves, and social media these days means we compare ourselves with other people and makes us think, well, I should be like this or I should be like that. Everybody is unique. Everybody has their own story, and that story is just as powerful to everybody else just because we don't think it is ourselves. I love listening to what other people have done and the things that they've been through. So yeah, it's sometimes just turning it round to help you as
Yeah, I
well.
agree. I absolutely love hearing about people's different experiences and the qualities that make them unique and individual and special. Going through those things where you're absolutely going to question yourself, putting yourself through these different challenges. That might be in sport, or it might be in your daily life. Those things do have an impact, but when you overcome them, that feeling of resilience and strength is what drives you through to the next thing.
Yeah.
And also for you, you've taken on some unbelievable challenges. And I want to get into some of those now, actually, because I've already mentioned that you ran over 80 marathons and you've completed 8 Ironman triathlons. And as well as that, you've swam the English Channel, you've cycled the length of New Zealand and across the width of the USA. You've skied across the Arctic Circle. You've ran 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days. The list just goes on. What was the first challenge you took on and why did you do that?
The first big challenge was the London
Right.
Marathon, and I didn't ever feel good enough. I remember watching it at the age of 8 and thinking, wow, I would love to do that. It took me until I was 34 before I plucked up the courage to do my very first
Wow.
marathon, and that was London. I thought to make it harder or to make it more fun, I would do it as Supergirl, so I did it as a superhero, and I got the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon dressed as a superhero. For me, it was that feeling on crossing the line that I felt like an absolute superhero. Wow, I have achieved something I never ever thought possible, that for years I'd tell myself was just out of my reach. It just wasn't something that I was going to be able to do. And it's quite funny with my marathons because I only know the time of 3 of my marathons. I could tell you every single marathon what I wore, but I couldn't tell you because for me, it's not about being the fastest or the fittest. It's about going out, having fun, and enjoying yourself. And when people say to me, what time are you going for? I just say the time of my life because I'm already good at telling myself I'm pretty rubbish. So if I told myself I want to do 4 hours and then I do 4:02, in my mind, I would crucify myself. I failed. You wanted to do this and you didn't. But I changed the narrative and I decide that I'm just going to have the best time that I can. So if that means that I'm helping people, encouraging them, finding out their story, and have a smile on my face. And with the bright costumes, the fruit costumes that I wear, I love it when little kids will see me running along and they'll be like, "Mummy, mummy, there's a strawberry," and or "There's a tomato," and I think I'm a strawberry, not a tomato. But if that makes them realise that you can have fun when you do these things, that's what it's all about for me. I'm never going to be an elite athlete, but at the end of the day, we all get the same medal if we come first or last. In the London Marathon, Mo Farah's medal is no different than
True,
mine.
very true.
So I tell my nieces and nephews that I'm a winner. And when I did, very fortunately become an MBE, I now tell people that actually stands for Marathon Babe Extraordinaire.
I love that. I think that's a great acronym. It's brilliant. You're absolutely right. It's about the experience on the way. I mean, I'm forever high-fiving all the children along the journey, like, when you see all the signs out as I'm going along,
Absolutely.
because I genuinely want to inspire and hopefully empower them on. And actually, my first major challenge was London, actually, when I was 18. I got in, luckily, when I was 18. So, yeah, it was one of those things where you thought, well, I don't know if this is like obscene, really, but I'm going to sign up and see how we get on. And yeah, I've absolutely had the journey of saying,
And
do it
that's
up.
incredible at 18 to do your first marathon and the London Marathon, because to me, that is the best marathon in the world. It's the only one that I've gone back and done more than once. Most of the others, I just think, well, there's so many other things to do, but London, every time, I've now done it 13 times. Only once have I had a ballot place. Every single time has been for
Yeah,
charity, other than that one
yeah.
time. But yeah, I kind of make a bit of a narrative each time with the costume that I wear to try and raise awareness of mental
Yeah,
health.
no, brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant what you do along the way then. Recently as well, you've completed a marathon up Mount Everest, which is just mind-boggling. Talk to me about that experience as well, please.
Yeah, I guess it's worth me going back a little bit with a few
Of
of
course,
them.
yeah.
Doing the 7 marathons on 7 continents, dressed as 7 different pieces of fruit, is kind of where it
Yeah.
started. When I was wearing the costumes, they would say, "Why?" First of all, they'd smile, but then they'd say, "Why are you wearing an apple, orange, or banana?" And I'd say, "I just want to change the conversation on poor mental
Mm.
health." And people would then say perhaps they or someone they knew had had a problem with their mental health, and it just normalized and opened up the conversation, and which is how I think it should be. And then after a few marathons, probably after about 50 marathons, someone said to me, "You're completely nuts." And I thought, what a great idea. So I got a nut costume, and I had a sign on me that said, "Nuts about mental health, together we can crack it," and got the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon dressed as a nut. And then I thought, I'm pretty crackers about this as well. So I got a cream cracker costume and I got a Christmas cracker costume, and I did those marathons. And I also did one in the London Eye to symbolise the highs and lows, or the ups and downs, that the pandemic was having on the nation's mental
Yeah.
health. And I did one underground to show that often beneath the surface, you never know what's
Mm.
going on. And the Everest one came about after I knew that the pandemic had such an impact on so many people's mental health. And so I did the 777, the World Marathon Challenge. This one was doing it in 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. And that was because I wanted to take the mental health message around the world, because I knew it was a global
Yeah.
problem. So having taken it around the world, I then thought, I want to take this message to the top of the world. So I put on my lemon costume because I knew it was going to be cold at the top and I wanted to be ice in a slice. And I took on the world's highest marathon, the Everest Marathon. Now, I completed it. I wasn't fast. It took a long, long time because the altitude, it took 10 days to get to the start, but the altitude was really, really
Yeah.
tough. But one of the biggest successes to me of that marathon was the tour guide, the Nepalese guide that we had taking us to base camp on those 10 days. Because I was wearing the lemon, he would often say, what's it all about? And I said, I want to, raise awareness of mental health. I want to get people
Yeah.
talking. And we got to a place called Gorakshep, where we were going to be going up Kalapatar, where you can see the whole of Everest and the mountain range for the first time. And it's just an incredible
Mm.
experience. But I'd been to base camp before with the army, And on that day, I didn't go up Calabatar because I was in my tent crying. Now, I told people at the time that it was altitude sickness, but I knew it's because I didn't feel good enough to actually go up there. And I told him that I struggled with depression and anxiety. And he said, "You have depression?" I said, "Yeah, I take medication now, so it helps
Yeah.
with it." And he said, "Do you think I have anxiety?" And I said, "No." I said, "He'd been this great gregarious guide who, cajoled us all along and, made a real team of us." And he said, I do. And I said, "Well, how do you manage it?" And he said, "With alcohol." And it made sense because there had been a few situations that had happened where it completely made sense. On the way down, he said to me, "Sally," he said, "I need your help." He said, "I need your charity to help me." And I said, "I don't have a charity, but," and we talked a little bit more about what he felt his problems were. I said, "But there are charities in Nepal that can help you." So we got back to Kathmandu, we went online, we found, some charities, and he's since been in contact to say that he's been in contact with his GP. He's now receiving GP. And that to me was more of a success because to have a male and somebody from a Nepalese culture who felt that they could say to me, "I need help," was the biggest success to me. And that's what I'm most proud of with that.
Absolutely. Wow. The meaning and the deeper reason behind all of these things that you do is so valuable, isn't it? That's obviously the drive behind them, as you say. There's no sort of greater reward really than to have that impact, and that impact that you've had on that gentleman. It's about
Yeah, because it's, as I say, knowing what suffering is like, I will do anything I can to prevent anyone else having to experience
yeah,
that because it was just so
yeah,
painful, so difficult, and so
yeah.
dark.
I admire the fact that you've channeled it into such positive work, and now able to use those things that you've grown from and put them into developing and helping others who need that support. And obviously, you touched on before the fact that you were awarded an MBE by the King in his very first birthday honours list. What was that experience like for you? What was the day itself like?
Well, to think this is someone I'd written a suicide note. I was ready to end my life. And to so suddenly then be recognised with an MBE, to go from that to that was just, I mean, I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that it was me because it's that I'm not good
Yeah.
enough. Whereas when I have that story that comes on now, and it still
Mm.
comes, I name that story and I call it the "I'm not good enough" story. So when it comes, I'm like, oh, it's the "I'm not good enough" story again. Park that because it's not going to help me if I'm trying something new. I've got to try and make my own story because I think in life we have the story that we tell ourselves, we have the story that others will tell of us, but we also have a story that we can make, and that's very different to what we've had in the past. So because I was telling myself that I was not good enough, it kind of perpetuated that. Whereas actually, if we switch that around and go, well, how do I make it so that I can do something? It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend that it is. But actually, when we learn to drive, that's not easy to begin with as well. And we think, I'm never going to be able to do this. How can everybody else do it so easily? And yet now, I'm not going to say we do it with our eyes closed, but we do it without thinking
Yeah.
about it. And that's where it needs constant work. We know with running that, some people, they'll need a personal trainer and a coach, and they have that because they will fall into their own bad habits if they're left to their own devices. And we can think, oh, I don't need that anymore because I know how to do it. But I know as a physio, if I give exercises to my patients, then they start to get into bad habits. And so that's why I still see a therapist so that they can just pull me up again. They know me, she knows me very well. And if I start going into the same story, she'll kind of pick me up and say, "We've heard this before, Sally. Remember when we said
Mm.
that? And remember how you've overcome it." And sometimes you need somebody else to remind you because we come a bit select on what we do or don't remember, whereas somebody else can point it out really quite nicely. By staying with the same person, I don't have to keep going over it again and again with a new therapist. So yeah, that's how I kind of get around that now. And I just liken it again to physical health. We have to put the effort in. It doesn't just happen.
I think that is a
Yeah,
strength,
so
really, isn't
that's
it?
where
I
it
think
is.
seeing when you need that support, and also just as you say, making it a routine, making it a habit, just like you would go to a trainer, or just like you would go to, a physiotherapist if you need help in that regard. All those things, just seeing it like that, because
Yeah, I often say to people that there's many a time I've regretted not going for a run. But when I've been for this, I've never been for one and regretted going for it. And actually, the feeling when it is raining and you get out and then you come back and you're like, you feel even more hardcore because you've done it on a
you do.
challenging day. But if it's like New Year's Day, you kind of think, yes, I've just done something that actually everybody else is there with a hangover. Sometimes I've done it with a hangover. But again, it makes it go
Yeah,
quicker.
yeah, you definitely do.
So,
I
yeah.
had the hardest interval session of my training plan the other week, and I've been building up over the last sort of 4 months of the plan. I knew this was coming, and literally as I step in out, it starts absolutely tipping it down, and it was freezing. So I only had like a running top on and some shorts, and I was like, "Oh my goodness! Like, what is going on? Why are we doing this?" And then afterwards, I felt amazing. I've done that now, and I still kept up, and I still did what I wanted to do, and it felt amazing. And sometimes, as you say, sometimes things don't go to plan, and things might demotivate you. And it's about recognizing that. It's about speaking to the people you need support with.
And you've just given a great example that's something that is completely out of our
Yeah,
control. The weather. We cannot control the weather. So you can train, and want it to be absolutely perfect. In fact, when I was taking on the World Marathon Challenge, I had a stress fracture in my foot. So I only was able to do 3 weeks training before I went.
goodness.
But I took on board a resilience coach, and I started working with a resilience coach because there wasn't much else I could physically. I was restricted with what I could do, but I wanted to train my mind, which I think we forget to do that. And if you think about how much a marathon or a 10K or 5K is a psychological challenge, yes, it's a physical challenge, but what can get us through is our mind. It's our mind that will say, well, you need to stop now, or no, you can keep
Yeah,
going. It's rarely actually physically our body that goes, because our our bodies are more capable than we think. And I think that's what I've learned through some of the things that I've done are, unless you're actually physically putting yourself in danger or you're going to cause yourself long-term damage. And I do advocate stopping on those times, because just that short term giving up on something because you can have longer term gain, I think is, and that's what I'm having to do. I was supposed to be doing a half marathon next week, but I've got a stress fracture again in my foot. So if I want to be able to do something in, say, 8 weeks
yeah,
time, I'm going to have more chance of being able to do that than if I go and do this
yeah,
half-heartedly, and yeah, than not. So I have to listen to my physio mind
yeah,
of what I tell my patients. And again, hopefully that shows leadership, that you're prepared to do what you tell others to
yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Rather than to push away, a lot of the therapy I've had is called acceptance and commitment therapy. So sometimes it's just accepting that certain things are happening. So rather than trying to say, oh, I feel really sad, it's kind of sitting with it and going, okay, well, why do I feel, what is making me feel sad, and what can I do about that, rather than trying to push it away. And I don't want to be sad, I don't want, because none of us can be happy every single day of the year, and we wouldn't appreciate the times when we do feel great if we hadn't felt so bad. And I look back now to the time when I wrote that suicide note, that that now pushes me forward, because when I'm taking on any of these challenges, for me, it's a choice to do these challenges, and I can stop if I want. It's not life or death. But when I was going through that really critical time at crisis point, it was a matter of life and death. So it's always reminding myself, and also telling myself, you got through that, and whatever you're doing now, it isn't as bad as that. So it's almost using that as a spur to spur me on and go, it's not as bad as that.
Yeah,
So I use it as
it's,
a catalyst,
yeah, it's to
really.
motivate yourself. And like I say, a lot of people will find that, I think, when they look at different challenges that they can take on, don't be afraid of it, because actually, yeah, the things you've gone through, you can look at and actually say, I've got through that. So anything else is, I'm putting myself there. I want to be in this place. I want to show myself. And actually, listening to something you were saying about, I'm not very good at that, and I'm not very good at that. There seems to be a thing that you keep sort of saying to yourself about different things, and then you prove to yourself that you are good at it. So I think that going forward, it should be, you've just got to prove that you can do it, and you can do it in your own way. That's also a key as well. It's not that you have to do it like everyone
Yeah,
else.
we're usually much worse critics of ourselves than we are of anybody else. I don't think well, I certainly wouldn't have any friends if I spoke to other people the way that I speak to myself, because they would be like, I'm just not tolerating that. So we do, yeah, we need to become our own best friend, which takes time and takes learning and balancing, but it is being kind to ourselves, because we have to look after ourselves first. Otherwise we're not
Yeah.
in a capacity to be able to help anybody else. If I'm not well, I couldn't go to work and look after patients. So
And the
yeah,
people
it's
around you as
very.
well that will push you there as well and support you when you need them.
And
So,
there are, different people support you in
yeah,
different ways, and it's recognizing who are the people that will help you in some ways and who are the people that will help you in other ways, and giving them the opportunity to help, because if you don't tell people there's a problem, they don't know that there's anything to help
yeah,
with.
absolutely. Bringing it back actually slightly to when you got the MBE, like how did that happen? Did you get like a letter? How?
Well, it was quite funny actually, because the letter went to a wrong address. So I got an email from somebody who, yeah, the person who lived at the address, they'd contacted somebody who I knew and said, "Do you know this person? This rather official letter has
Yeah,
arrived." And so I got this email saying, "This look, this letter's arrived." So I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll come." And it said, that you need to get, in haste or something. I can't remember exactly what it said. Urgent, I think it said on it.
don't need to keep
So
waiting.
I then started Googling, what does an urgent letter from the Cabinet Office
Yeah,
mean? Thinking it was like some kind of parking
yeah,
fine or something like that. And that's when the honours system came up, and I was like, no, no way. So then when I went over and I collected it from this person who I didn't know at all, and they said, "Oh yeah, here's the letter," and I said, "Oh, thank you." Drove down the road and then pulled over and opened it, and I sat there and I just went, "Oh my
wow,
goodness!" And yeah, I didn't tell anyone that whole evening. I didn't tell anyone, and then I contacted my parents and I just said, "Are you both together? Can you sit down?" I think they thought I was going to tell them that. I don't know what they thought. I got panicked or
yeah,
something, but I just said, that yeah, this, are you ready to come to the palace with me?
that's special.
But I didn't actually wear a fruit costume for the palace, but I have previously been to the palace dressed as a slice of orange and a slice of lemon. I went in a lovely blue dress, so you could have thought I was maybe a
Yeah, it's
blueberry.
slight hint.
But yeah, it was a really, really special day, and to have my parents there was lovely as
How
well.
incredibly special. And like you say, that day must have been so special to have them there with you and having that support after the journey you've been on. I mean, it really goes to show, like,
Yeah, I look back, I think it's over 50 charities that I've raised for now. I've raised money for, and almost
yeah,
£1 million. So those times when I'm telling myself I'm not good enough, I can just kind of go, actually, you're not bad. You're not doing too bad. I don't think I would ever get to that point, but actually, just to tell myself you're not doing too bad
yeah,
in life if you've achieved that, because I know that was obviously never ever a goal, but what's come out of it has hopefully helped a lot of people. And I just think when you've been in a situation that's not pleasant, you wouldn't want anyone else to be in that situation, so you'll do whatever you
yeah.
can to help
And
them.
yeah, you've obviously touched on there that over £1 million raised for charity. That impact on so many people is just unbelievable. And I can sit here and say that's amazing, and you are amazing because the way that that's going to change so many people's lives and already has changed people's lives. It's
I just
incredible.
hope that it's kind of like it goes full circle, that they, once they've received the help that they've got, and that they then feel better in whatever way, that they want to give
Yeah,
back. And so it sort of self perpetuates in that way, because that for me is, seeing how other people have helped me is how can I help
yeah.
them. So yeah, and also I can tell people the things that didn't work for me. That doesn't mean it's not going to work for them, but it just gives you variety, and variety is the spice of life.
Absolutely. You're also an ambassador for numerous brilliant causes as well, including the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, Walking with the Wounded, and Say Yes More. As well as this, you're the United Kingdom's first and actually only, as it stands, female national ambassador for the Army Cadets. These are just huge honours, and just endless lists. It feels, and massive responsibilities with them too. What do these roles actually require from you, and why do you think it's important that you're involved with them?
The National Ambassador for the Army Cadet Force is one of the greatest honours, and I to be able to hopefully inspire young people. And at a time when I'd just been medically discharged from the army, to have another organisation, almost a close cousin to the army, to say, actually, yes, one door's closed, another one opens. We would love you to champion what you do and be open and honest. I thought that was very forward thinking of an organisation, to have someone who, hand up, has said, I've struggled, I still struggle, but I get help with that struggle, can hopefully show young people that you can still achieve even if you have these, struggles. People have asthma and they still go on to achieve. They have diabetes and they still, go on to achieve these things. And yes, there are times when you might be hospitalised with an asthma attack or,
I've got
but that
and
doesn't,
I've had pneumonia
yeah,
twice,
it doesn't
and it goes to show, like, you get
it doesn't rule you out of life. You can go on, but you have to manage it. And you have to know that, perhaps in the summer, the pollen might make you worse. So you just know on those days, I need to be a bit more sensible. And that's where, with my mental health, I can hopefully share with young people that actually, if a grandparent passes away, it's a really difficult time, and that's quite normal because you're close to that person, and it takes so much strength to actually reach out, and you can help others in the future. So yeah, having an impact on young people and hopefully being able to be relatable to them, so that they don't say, well, it's all right for her, she's had this or she's had
yeah,
that. We often have to make our opportunities in life. Yes, some do before, but I think the more you put into life, the more that you get back. And so for me, having volunteered since I was 16, I will say to people, this is what I've got from it. You too can have that opportunity. It's not going to suddenly just land on your lap, but go out there and look for it, and just, say to people, how can I help you with that? And it's amazing what different opportunities come. And in fact, Ben, even us just being here today, that came at the London Marathon.
you just bumped into
An
each other
opportunity
in
came up.
the area
Yeah,
watching at the
it's a
end.
perfect example of just by being open and talking to people and listening to their story, finding out your incredible story and what you're achieving is great to be able to. And I've told lots of people about you and what you're wanting to take on, in the hope that it inspires others as well. So, we don't always have to tell our own story. We can share those of others who are doing well as well. And that's why I quite often, I've put quite a few people forward for different awards, because I know that feeling I got when I got that letter or that email, and if I can have other people have that feeling for what they're doing, then why wouldn't you do that? There's too many people who are jealous in the world, and I have it a lot. People think that it was all right for you, you've done this, that, and the other. There's a lot of things that people don't see
Yeah,
underneath that iceberg. All the
yeah,
dedication, the
yeah,
hard work, the long hours, the sacrifices. But
yeah.
yeah, we've all got a great story, I
Yeah,
believe.
everybody's different successes and their different stories and how they've got there, and want to find out more. That's I completely agree. I'm so invested in finding out others, and I think it inspires yourself, it inspires me, and I love to lift up others and see how they're getting on. And we obviously see some of that in some of the things we do. And
Yeah, I think particularly the Duke of Edinburgh's, I did it. I was a late starter in a lot of things in life, so I was just at the cusp of when that did. But I still live my life through the values of the Duke of Edinburgh's award. I still volunteer. I still do something physical. I still do a skill. I go on expeditions and I do residential. Yeah, and you could too, if that is your priority. It's not everybody's priority, and it can change in life. I look at my sister, and she's got three amazing
yeah,
children, and what she does for them, and the amount of resilience that it takes to bring up three
absolutely,
children. I get so many people say, oh, I'm just a mum. I'm like, you are not just a mum. That is an incredible thing. I unfortunately haven't had that opportunity, but it doesn't mean that I can't do other things. And sometimes I have to look and say, well, I didn't get that opportunity in life, but I have to do something different. So it's not that one thing is better than the
yeah,
other. Can they knit with their children,
yeah,
grandchildren? It's what gets the same feelings,
totally agree.
and it doesn't always have to be sort of high impact, high adrenaline things. You can get those
It's whatever
feelings
you
from other
dedicated your life
things.
to as well, because like being a mum or being a dad, or whatever it is that you're doing, and or taking on these incredible challenges, they take dedication in one way or another. And if you're willing to dedicate your time and put it towards something that's truly valuable to you, then then that's valuable to everybody.
Things don't last forever. So, if people have got young children and they think, oh, I'm on this
Yeah.
treadmill of, having to the school run and go to work and then I get no time for myself, that's not going to be, the case forever. And, quite often people, when they then have, children who leave home, they've got that empty nest, and then that's the time when they can do something for them. So I think it's just being grateful for the situations that we find ourselves in, because we never know if there's somebody else who would have loved that and can't have that. People might love to do the challenges and activities. Some people would say, not a chance, you take it. I couldn't think of anything worse. But yeah, it's just making the best of the hand that we're dealt.
Yeah,
really.
and appreciating where you've come from and the journey you've been on in that way. And your journey has led you to becoming Veteran of the Year in 2023. Can you elaborate on that award?
It was quite a funny story, because it was, last year I'd been nominated for Role Model of the Year, and luckily at the evening it was the first award. So it meant great, I could, I won it. I didn't know I'd won until I heard my name call out. So I won it. And then I thought, brilliant, I can just listen to everybody else and, just congratulate them. So I'd gone to it was getting on to the evening, I'd gone to the bar, and the bar was at the back of the room. And then they were doing the Lifetime Achievement Award, and everybody was stood up and clapping. And then I heard my name, and I was at the bar, and I just thought, they're just obviously running through, who's been, who's won. And I turned round at the bar, and the person I was with, I said, I'm sure that was just my name. And they went, yeah, it was. And we turned round and everybody was stood up. And so I said, I heard over the microphone again, so, let's hope Sally's not gone home. Sally, if you're here, can you come up to the stage? So I said to this girl, I suppose I ought to go up to the stage. So I went on stage, and she said, how does it feel? I said, I have absolutely no idea what this is all about. And she said, you have just won the English Veteran of the Year. And I was like, I was at the bar. Can I go back to the bar? Because it was just,
So
and then
overwhelming.
they expected me to give this speech. And I was just like, I'm just a girl who never thought I would achieve anything.
As you faced
And
earlier
you're
on, and
calling.
now.
So yeah, it was quite embarrassing, but again, it gives a bit of a funny story. And also, I think it, just that reminder to stay humble, because no way did I expect that. It was just a really pleasant surprise, and I've got photos where I'm just
Shocked.
like, what? How? And then I was in a bit of a fluster after that, because they were like, can we take photos? Could you do an interview? And I was like, can I just let it sink in?
Incredible.
So, but the great thing now is that I'm now a judge for those awards. So again, it's giving back and sort of, going along and hearing other people's stories, and you get to know other things that people are doing and can champion those, and also sometimes connect them with other people of saying, do you know them? They've done this, and you might be able to do something together. So yeah, really sort of helping in that way, and a real privilege to do that.
I bet. So what does the future look like for Sally Orange? Do you have any one thing in mind that might be a pinnacle challenge in the
Well,
future?
Ben, you might be too. The future's bright. So no, a couple of things. So when I did the World Marathon Challenge, and it was the 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days, I knew that there was a high risk of failure with that, and I knew that I would struggle if I didn't achieve that. So I sort of set myself a bit of a safety net I put in place. If I was the start of a new project, and Antarctica is the hardest continent to get to and most expensive, it had taken me 4 years to get sponsors to be able to go and do this challenge. And I thought, I know that schools and young people love it when I take along the costumes of fruit. And I thought, what if I now try and do a marathon on every continent as a vegetable? So when I was in Antarctica, the first one, I thought it was too silly of me to try and do all of those marathons as a vegetable. But Antarctica being the hardest and the coldest, I thought, I'm going to be frozen. I'll be a frozen pea. So I ran dressed as a pod of peas. Everybody in Antarctica had their buffs up over their nose, their ski goggles on, their hats on. You could not see a single part of them. And I was the same. You couldn't see my face. But I had this great big pod of pea costume that when everyone went by, they would thumbs up, and
Such a
they
low
would
risk.
ask, why are you dressed as a pod of peas? want to change the conversation. So I'm now, on a mission to do every continent as a vegetable. I was due to be going to Greenland in a few weeks and run there as a carrot, because I thought if I'd been frozen peas, I could be frozen carrots. Unfortunately, other situations have meant that I can't go. But I'm hoping that I've got a place for London next year, so I'm going to be a lettuce.
Fantastic. I can't wait to cheer
And
you
I'll
on.
have a sign on me saying "Let us talk."
Perfect. There you go. It does
So
change the conversation. It starts that conversation.
and being an iceberg lettuce, again, just
Mm.
highlighting that there's a lot of things that go on beneath that iceberg. So if you're at London, look out for what will probably be a wet lettuce, because I'll be hot and
I'll be there.
sweaty. But it's the different layers that we all have.
I look forward to giving that lettuce a hug at the finish line for sure. I'd like to come and run it myself. I don't think I'm doing it next year, but I'm going to come back to London soon for sure. Yeah, the month
Yeah,
before. So
definitely.
thank you so much for sharing all of that, and it's been such a pleasure having you on today. And it brings me to my last question, actually. And we ask this to everybody who comes on the podcast. What's your best advice to someone who says, I could never do that, I can't even run for the bus?
So, my best advice is don't listen to that inner critic that I'm not good enough, I can't do that. You don't always need to run for the bus. Sometimes you can walk there. And as if you've started walking, the next you know that you can walk. So the next time, if you need to go just that little bit faster, just go that bit faster and just break it down so you don't have to do it all in one go. It's planning and preparation that can help you so that you don't have to actually run for the bus. Just start with walking it first of all, and then you're prepared for if you did ever need to run for it. Then you're not out of breath when you get
You can
there.
enjoy. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Sally. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
It's so nice to chat. Yeah, so nice to chat to you, and just congratulations to you on everything that you've achieved. I know that you've got a marathon next week, which I'm looking forward to
Thank you.
following. And I know that you've put the training and the effort in, and just go and have the best time. Just go and be
Thank you so
you.
much. So much of what you've said today is going to inspire me along the way. And I can't wait to see you soon.
Oh, thanks.
I'm joined now by Rory Donaldson, who, after being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, felt that he might not be able to run ever again. However, he reached out to us after hearing about our Deliriously Mad Challenges, and he told us that he was set to take on a 110k ultramarathon through the Moroccan desert. Now, we said we could support him with nutritional backing along with our sponsors Veloforte, and he joins me now to tell us how he got on. So, Rory, how are you?
Hi, Ben. Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me on. Yeah.
That's an absolute pleasure. I know you're literally just off the flight back, right? You got back yesterday?
Yeah, back last night. Finally slept in my own bed. Felt good, pretty good. Got some recovery.
Nice. Could you just sort of tell me a little bit about that diagnosis that I mentioned before and like what it felt like when you got that?
Yeah, so January last year. So I guess coming up to 2 years ago. Started to get some pain in my shoulder. Was kind of annoying because at the same time I was rehabbing from a torn ACL. So I was doing lots of squatting and stuff in the gym, trying to build up the strength after getting surgery on that. And then noticed some pain in my shoulder. Then that moved into pain down my arm and down the other side of the arm. So I was like, this isn't quite right. So eventually got that scanned. It showed quite a bit of swelling, which was kind of unusual because there wasn't any like major tissue damage or whatever. There was just sort of swelling for the sake of swelling. So had that, and then eventually went through lots of MRIs, lots of scans, and then was told I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which didn't.
Bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah,
right?
and I didn't really understand what it was or like how it would affect me. So my only memories were my grandmother had it, but she passed away when I was about 7. But my memories of her were her in a lot of pain, so it wasn't something that I really understood, and wasn't something that I like. Yeah, my first questions were kind of like Googling, can I still run? Can I still like take part in sport? And not really getting a lot of solid answers to that kind of stuff. So it was pretty scary at the time.
How old were you when you got that diagnosis, by the way?
So I was, well, I guess, 28. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like such a young age to get such a diagnosis, right?
I guess the biggest demographic is like older women, but they're kind of like a peak kind of younger people. But it wasn't something I was expecting to be diagnosed with. So
no, absolutely not. So like you say, it was complete shock, and your questions are obviously about staying fit. Were you a runner beforehand? Was that something you did quite a lot by the sound of it? Or?
Yeah, I did a bit. So I think I'd moved to London about 3 or 4 months before that, and as everyone does when they move to London, they join some running clubs and start running loads.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're in a few of the similar ones.
Yeah,
right?
so I'd done a bit of that, and I'd played a bit of sort of touch rugby and stuff before. And yeah, like I said, I was in the gym a lot trying to rehab a reconstructed ACL. At the time was, I thought, my biggest like medical problem, and then that kind of went out the window as soon as I was diagnosed.
And so obviously then getting that diagnosis, what happened from there? Like, what were the steps to then get back into running and doing the things you've been doing?
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed, then it was, in some ways, it was kind of a relief because it gave me sort of like a target to get back to, and it gave me like an understanding of what was going on. So at the time I had a lot of pain kind of in my like upper limbs, so it didn't affect my legs, but yeah, it was just confusing because I was like, why am I in so much pain? So when I got the diagnosis, it was quite good because it then gave me something to like work towards. And luckily I was quite quick in getting on the right medication. So started on some steroid medication and some like disease modifying drugs, which then took a few months to kick in, but once they kicked in, then I kind of got back to normal slightly. And then it was just having conversations with the doctor at St. George's. She was great. She was like, we'll treat you to target, and targets whatever you want to do. At which point I was like, fine, I'll run. At that point then I was like, run my first marathon. I ended up running first marathon last year.
When did you do that?
October or November last year. So Lisbon Marathon.
Wow, so that's like a 9-month window since that.
Yeah. So she's like, yeah, normally people wouldn't run a marathon in their first year of diagnosis, but I was like, cool, I just want to do that. So yeah, did the first marathon for Versus Arthritis, which was the charity I've been fundraising for. Ended up doing London Marathon not too long after that, and then after marathon, it was like, cool, what next?
Yeah, and you've done some pretty crazy stuff since then, right? Like, what else have you been up to this year?
Yeah, so done London Marathon, then did 60k around Tooting, which was fun. So did 5k every hour on the hour for 12 hours from the pub. So that in the pub got me to drink. And then every half an hour I went out, or every hour I went out and did a 5k. Returned for half an hour. Everyone got some pints, went and did that.
Yeah, I bet it was a really good like social atmosphere, right, as well, getting like everyone out.
Yeah, it was really good. And it was just kind of nuts of like just having a big group of people like screaming and shouting every time I was running in and out of the local pub.
So good.
That was good.
That sounds so good. And I expect you've got some other sort of challenges lined up in the future, similar to that by the sound of it.
Yeah, so that was good. So I guess I did 12 hours. The challenge maybe, don't know if I want to do 24 hours next year or something, or
that could be in the offing perhaps. And you've been doing it for charity as well. What's the charity again, and what is the cause, sort of raising funds for?
Yeah, so I was doing it for Versus Arthritis. So they're a charity that look after all sorts of different arthritis. Obviously, there's rheumatoid arthritis, which is the autoimmune disease, which is what I have. There's also osteoarthritis, and which is your general wear and tear type arthritis. But they look after lots of different conditions. So they do a lot of research into kind of treatments for rheumatoid arthritis, and they fund a lot of our research, which is good because I was quite fortunate in that when I was diagnosed, I got on the right drug pretty much straight away, and that was the right drug for me. Not everyone is fortunate to get on the right drug. There's lots of different it's just a big classification of disease. There's lots of different ones. Not every drug works for every person. So it funds a lot of research into kind of finding the right drugs and new drugs and being able to match people better to drugs. Because I was quite fortunate in I could keep running. There's a lot of people, I guess, that get diagnosed and have a much, much harder time than I do.
Can people sort of donate as well to the cause that you've got there? And how much have you raised so far? Like, where's it at the moment?
Yeah, so I think I've had about 4 Just Giving pages over the past 12 months. So I've probably spammed too many of the group chats. But yeah, so I've got a Just Giving page now for the ultra marathon.
Brilliant. We can share that out as well then.
In total, maybe we're sort of 7 or 8 grand in the past 12 months.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's like doing such good work. So yeah, absolutely. We'll share that out as well and hopefully continue to boost it up. And I'm sure there's going to be lots more on the way. So getting then to the challenge that you've done this past weekend, can you explain what it was and, you know, what that experience was like, perhaps getting there and then on the day itself?
Yeah. So the weekend just gone, did Ultra X Morocco. So it's a 2-stage ultra marathon in the desert in Morocco. So kind of south of the Atlas Mountains. So gateway to the Sahara. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was good. It was 60k on the first day, although I ended up doing about 64k because I got lost, went the wrong way, lost a whole load of places.
Oh no! Do you get to count that to the next day, or is that just bonus?
Yeah, that's just I just did the longest of everyone pretty much. And then 50 kilometers on the second day, camping in between.
Wow.
But yeah,
Wow.
it was by far the furthest I've run in a 2-day space. It was the first sort of 2-day ultra. But yeah, it was just an unbelievable experience. So nervous the day before, just because you're like, yeah, you don't quite know what you're putting yourself into, and it's pretty hard on the legs. It's a lot of sand and rocks and hills and stuff, and most of my training was around Tooting-Common or Battersea Park, and it's a completely different environment. It was just, yeah, ridiculously tough, especially on that day too.
I bet, yeah, because like you say, you're used to that sort of hard and flat terrain, and going more up sort of mountains and up the up dunes, and experiencing that must be quite an experience and challenging in so many ways. Not only that, but obviously being 110k, like that's no joke. We'd love to keep supporting you in the future if there's anything that comes up. So definitely keep in touch and keep smashing it, mate. Now, if you're a Deliriously Mad Challenger and we can support you in any way possible, please do get in touch via the BKDMC Instagram. You can find our link there and you can send us a message, and we'd love to support you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Running for the Bus, presented by BKDMC. Thank you to our guest today, Sally Orange MBE, the podcast rooms, LMNT and runderwear for their support, as well as, of course, our sponsor, Veloforte. Head to the BKDMC Insta now to find our running playlist, the Rookie Runners training plan, and lots more. If you've enjoyed the show, well, what are you waiting for? Hit follow and you'll be notified every time a new episode drops. We'd also love to hear from you, so do drop us a message or leave a review. See you next time on Running for the Bus, where you can listen on the run, on the bus, or whilst you're running for it.